The death of a child is a painful experience that can befall any family. Unfortunately, it happens. While it is an agonizing experience for the entire family, the pain that the mothers and fathers feel is different and immense. My name is Dr. Mercy Korir, and on this episode of Health Digest, we focus on what parents go through after the tragic loss of a child and what they can do to move forward from this.
Pregnancy is a journey traveled by a mother and her unborn baby. It comes with its own challenges and risks to both. This creates a strong bond between the two, a bond that often lasts a lifetime. But when this bond breaks and takes away the child's life, it ravages the mother emotionally, socially, and even physically. This loss comes in form of a miscarriage, stillbirth, or child loss. Either way, it remains a sad reality for many families in Kenya.
On the ladies, and then...
Bennington Awino Ooko is an audit manager in a local bank. But away from his job, he dedicates his time to helping fathers who have suffered a child loss to cope with their grief through the Tears Foundation. But before he got to do this, he has his own painful backstory of pregnancy loss.
We lost about 5 different stages, different months before birth. So the toll, it took a toll on my wife. For those years, it's probably 10, 13 years. She was carrying that burden. And we had about one of our colleagues lost her son. So she got referred to Tears Foundation. So when she finally realized that, she invited my wife to their meetings. So my wife attended their meetings for a whole year as they take her through the journey of loss. That is like 13 years later. But she was carrying that burden. So she informed me about it, and I thought it was a wise thing.
His wife told him the burden she was carrying for more than 13 years has been eased off thanks to the sessions she was having at Tears Foundation. According to Ooko, it's not easy for men to open up. Being
the first man, I decided, let me take the mantle and share my experience and be the leader of Men Foundation chapter, Tears Foundation chapter, men's chapter. So that's how I came in. And surprisingly, the first meeting, when I was meeting with Joyce, met in a hotel here in South Bay. She was going to meet her mother. So the mother came, and I think the lady was working. Then she had a child loss before, like a year before. So they were meeting the anniversary date. And she broke down during our meeting, and I thought, this is something I need to do to help mankind, because men, we don't speak out. Men are really suffering. Men keeping themselves, and that's why you see some are diverted, some go to drinking, some lose their lives, commit suicide, some into depression, because men don't share. Women have got a very good support system.
He reminisces on his long and winding emotional journey.
I think the first one was the hardest, because we've got married, 5 years, no kids. Everybody's asking what is happening. The boys club is asking, what are you doing with your wife? Others saying probably 1 or 2, something is wrong, either your wife or you. Then finally she tells you she's expecting that joy. Then I think we started going to clinic, and I used to accompany her because we waited for so long. So I used to go to every other appointment with the doctors. So finally, on the 7th month, they do a scan, and they say there's a problem. The baby is not moving. After waiting for those months, that was a bit painful. Now they had to go and take her to the theater and wash her. You've already told everybody, my wife now is expecting. Everybody in the village knows. The whole network knows. Then finally, it's very hard now to come and tell guys, we are not now going to have a baby. That one was a struggle.
For him, the greatest lesson he has learned is the need for a solid support system for people going through such events.
Subsequent ones were just the same, different months, 3 months, 4 months, and highest was about, I think, about 8 months. But the rest were just like that. But the first one was the one which was hard on me personally and my wife. Now going back, waited 5 years, you're married in church, And no, babe, so people are starting to judge you. People are starting to ask questions. Other guys are even telling you, you get another wife, after all those child loss. So it was not easy, but by the grace of God, we managed, and at least I had my mother and my grandmother, who were very good support system to me. They kept praying for us, but it's not easy. Even your friends, you see your friends, their kids, you guys, you've gone to school together. They have kids, you don't have kids. You go to their birthdays, you don't have somebody to call you your kid. So it's not easy. So that was a journey for those years. But I thank Dr. Karanja of Mata and Metropolitan that he really worked with us. Yeah, he really worked with us. Even when finally, after some time, we had a firstborn, after about 8 years. But he worked with us. So he's somebody who was concerned. Every other appointment, he worked with us, the journey.
Child and infant losses often strain the relationship between the couples, with some marriages even crumbling.
My wife was carrying the biggest burden because as much as I'm the father to the unborn, she's the one who's carrying the baby. She's already felt in her womb all those time, yeah? She's having sickness, she's always in the hospital, so she carried the bigger burden than me. So my aim, what I resolved to do was to support her throughout. Yeah, go to hospital even when they're going to take her to the theater for the cleaning. I used to be there all through because I think she carries the biggest weight in this issue. Me, I'm a parent, yes. I've lost, yes, but 90% of the weight is on her. Society is judging her. Everybody is judging her. Now, if you judge her, then she'll break down. So I made it a personal decision to support, to be there for her, to work with her throughout.
The worst part of it is the negative perceptions and the hushed talk. For a man, the stigma manifests through endless questions on the absence of a child or children in the marriage.
Especially the boys' club that we boys belong to. People tell you, Kwandi, you can't, when you are shooting misses, how come you are losing babies? Yeah, probably get another wife. So, and then even the church is not even considerate. You meet a priest or a pastor, tell you don't worry, you'll get more. Get more from where? Nobody feels the man. Everybody's feeling the lady. But the man, you're left on your own. So for men, it's tough. Because you don't know who to talk to, you don't know where to go to. You only, as they say, unakufa kisoja.
Oku encourages men to be open and talk about their experiences with infant and child loss.
Ladies talk about these issues. Men, we close the issues. There's nothing like you are a man, no. You are a human being. You got emotions like everybody else. Yeah, talk to your peers. Come to Tears Foundation. We'll hold your hand. And please share. The more you share, the better it becomes. Then don't blame your wife because this is nothing got to do with your wife or you. This is just, God has given you a kid. The journey maybe is 3 months, whatever months. You've shared the journey. You appreciate and thank God for that. But men must come out and start sharing and start speaking.
Joyce Washira has also been through this issue of child loss.
I'm a mother to Josiah, who was born in 2002. And I'm also a mother to a girl called Neema. I lost Neema in 2003 through a miscarriage. And I rarely would introduce Neema unless it's in a platform like this. So sometimes it also comes as a shock to people who don't know that I had a miscarriage. Because when I had that miscarriage, those are the days that you don't talk about it. There's a lot of stigma and shame around it. So for many years, I never talked about that until when I knew better. And that's 10 years after Neema. That means in 2013, I got to know that many women lose their pregnancies and they go silent. And some of them even deep into depression just because of not sharing and not talking about it and trying to suppress and trying to forget. So when I came to know many people in my place of work. That time I was in the parastatal. I was in HR and administration. I could pick very many women who have had a miscarriage, and there was a lot of hush-hush about it. And I got very curious, why are people so silent about miscarriages, about stillbirths? And it was a long journey, just reaching out. If I hear a fununu, that somebody has lost a pregnancy, I would kind of have a very intimate conversation, and actually they would really open up. I wasn't skilled, I didn't know anything about it, but I could tell that that person feels a load has lifted. And even as I shared my own story, I started to feel like even myself, I'm offloading, you know.
She started being vocal on pregnancy loss and made it her mission to create awareness about it.
I started talking to women about miscarriage and what they think about it and why it's such a taboo topic. And as I said, it took me a very long journey. You know, when you're employed, you have a career, and there's a voice at the back of your mind that you need to be doing this. You fight it for a long time. So I fought it for 10 years, you know, from 2003 to 2013. But I was, I think, on the making, because a lot happened between 2003 to 2013. I also didn't breastfeed my son because I had what is called a lactation failure. So I was also curious, why are women, some of them are not breastfeeding, some of them get a lot of milk. So between that and 2013, I had understood a lot about pregnancies, about lactation, and I started pursuing a lactation specialist journey. So in between 2002 and 2013, I'd already become a lactation specialist. I had already known there's something called postpartum depression because I had gone through postpartum OCD myself. So I was just in the making. God, I think, was planning something with my experiences, but he took 10 years for me to understand where I'm supposed to be.
Pregnancy loss is always overlooked, but Joyce says it should not be so.
Perinatal loss is definitely a very unique kind of loss because, as you'll hear from many moms, if it's a miscarriage or a stillbirth, probably not many people knew you're pregnant. Like for me, nobody knew I was pregnant, you know, apart from probably very close people, because I was at 10 weeks when I lost Neema. And so not many people know. So by the time you are grieving, you are telling somebody, I'm feeling so sad, I've lost a pregnancy, people are wondering, so what are you grieving? You know, we didn't even know, you know, you didn't even bond, you know. People even call it, that was just blood, you know. So what are you grieving about? So it is really minimized. But the grief is just as any other loss. Eh? So I think for me, that's why it feels like people feel like it's not anything to talk about, because it's little grief, because it was a little child. It was just a miscarriage, you know. The child didn't even live. They were born asleep, you see. This child has just been taken from your womb to the NICU. So they haven't lived long enough for you to bond and to say this was your child. So that's how they minimize that pain. So they say little grief, you know, little child, little grief, you know. So it's actually a very silent grief, very, very silent. Only the parents feel it. Let's say like now, if somebody uses the word utapata mwingine, you know, you'll get another one. And especially if you're a young person, they're actually telling you, walk over your loss, you know, go and try for another one. But for you as a grieving mom, that's not where you are at. You are at this place of loss. So can you meet me here?
Working parents who lose their pregnancies suffer more pain, as most employers are not aware of the challenges they face.
When you've conceived and you've miscarried, most of your employees, your workmates don't know, or maybe even your boss. Most of the time they don't know. But if you need to be out of work for maybe the DNC, you check in just like a patient, and then you check out and probably bring a sick off. You know, 2 days, 3 days I was away because I was ill. And you leave it at that because you don't want to go into details. But what grief will do to you, it will ensure that the people in the office notice there's something. This is not the same person who left before this sick off. This is a different person. So I think that's where the place is for the person to be open enough to say what they have gone through. Because just by chance, you might have an HR who understands. And let me talk about the HR. I went to one of the banks, I won't mention it, and we were talking about, in the wellness program, we were talking about how do you support people who are coming from a perinatal loss, compassionate leave. And there was one gentleman who was looking at us as we were talking, and he kept on looking and looking. You can tell when somebody is getting what you're saying, and he's the only person who didn't say anything until the end of the session. He said, I'm a banker and I've lost jobs, not once or twice, because I've lost money as an employee of a bank because we went through a perinatal loss and nobody understood that I was in confusion. I was always angry. I was always sad. I was disoriented, you know. And that opened a conversation with the management of that institution. Yeah. So what am I saying? That the people who have suffered the loss actually are the ones who are great advocates, you know. But it's the opposite. We be silent and then we imagine everybody around us understands or knows. So that's where the problem is. But if we can be loud enough, or not loud enough, but just say, I've lost a child and this is who I am for now. You know, I'm feeling very confused. I feel like even my responsibilities are not able to, you know, can we work together? I think that's what we call bereavement care even in the workplace. But it actually starts with the sufferer, unfortunately. But also, can we also educate the institutions, you know, the HR people? How do you ensure that your space is comfortable and safe enough for people to come and tell you when they have suffered such a loss, especially perinatal loss, whereby nobody even will ever know that you are pregnant?
But there are different ways mothers can overcome their grief.
Being part of a support group, because that's a place you'll meet somebody who is like you. And that's why we're saying my tribe. We speak the same language. Our language here is not tutapata mwingine. You know, our language here is not it is well. Our language here is the truth of what we are feeling. And that's the grief, because grief is those emotions we feel on the inside, you know. So when you come to a support group, you do something that is called mourning. You know, mourning is expressing that grief. Mourning is the outward expression of grief that is inside. So most people are left with a grief that is inward, but they don't bring it out, you know, because there are no safe spaces. You can't go and tell your colleagues or your neighbors or your family friends every time how you feel. So a support group is that place whereby you bring out. So we come here to mourn. We come to the center to mourn, but not just to mourn, but also to be educated about grief, what is happening to you. So even at the tier support groups, we have 12 topics of the year, January to December. There's even a topic, how to go back to work after your perinatal loss. Yeah. What do you do first? You need to inform your employer before you arrive so that he can prepare his people. You see, sometimes you can go on maternity leave and then you have a stillbirth. When you come back, from the security guard to the receptionist, you know, telling, oh, umerudi mapema sana, mtoto amenyonya kweli. You know, they'll assume that you've got a baby and they're healthy and you're back. And it's not their fault. You had gone on maternity leave. But the truth of the matter, you didn't receive that child. Maybe they were born asleep, you know. So when you inform your employer or whoever you're working with, they're able to prepare the other people so that as you come, they don't look at you with sympathy, but with empathy, so that they can also be careful the words they use. And we're not saying that your colleagues walk on eggshells when around, but information is power. It helps them make the decision how to handle you, so that even as you are getting confused, where is my laptop, you know, they are kind of understanding. They're not saying that you have changed or you are careless. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of awareness that needs to be done. And as I said, it's both, you know, the griever and the place of work.
Joyce Wairimu is another mother at Tears Foundation. Despite the loss of her child, she still cherishes her motherhood status. She currently works as an accounts clerk in a school.
I am a mom to one boy. His name is Adrian. He was born on 6th December 2019. He was born still. My son, I had a smooth pregnancy. I learned I was pregnant in March 2019, and my pregnancy was smooth all along. I was 37 weeks, 5 days, when I gave birth to my son Adrian. And it happened I don't know what to say, but I didn't feel his movement for me to go to the hospital. I went for a checkup just like any other, and I believed everything was okay. It was weird because part of me was believing everything is okay, and the other part was, please God, let everything be okay. And when I got to the hospital, I was sent for a scan, and nothing was alarming to me, only that my baby was not moving. When I went to the sonographer, he did the scan, and I asked him, do you see any movement? He said no. He did it again. I asked him, is there any heartbeat? He said no. And I was shocked, couldn't believe it. The world that I knew ceased to exist. Everything came down crashing. I was in denial. I was confused at that moment. So later on I was admitted. I gave birth to my boy. It was around 9:08 p.m. I remember very well. He was weighing 3.1 kgs. After I gave birth to him, I went back to he was born sleeping. The room was very loud with silence. It echoed the stillness of my baby. And I went back to the maternity ward, and I didn't see my son immediately. I went back after I gave birth to him. It took me around 10 or so minutes. I gathered some courage, and I went back to the delivery room. I found my son. I was shown my son. He looked okay. He was there sleeping. It did hurt because I knew he won't wake up from that sleep. Some days I'm worried I'm forgetting his face, how he looked like. I wish I was given that time to connect with him.
Tears Foundation has been of great help to her, especially when it comes to walking the journey of grief.
I was in search of somebody who would understand my pain, how I felt. And I was searching in YouTube, and that's where I found somebody who connected me to Joyce. And that's how I found myself here. I'd say since I came here, my life hasn't been the same. Because before then, I wasn't myself. I was sad, I was angry. There was so much self-hatred. I felt like a failure. I felt like I failed my baby. I felt like I didn't protect him like I should. At some time, I was angry at him. I felt like he gave up so early. Like, I feel like I was a letdown to so many people because he would be a nephew to my sisters, a grandchild to my mom. I felt like I let them down. But when I joined the group, I learned that I was enough. I did all I could, that I did my best. It wasn't my fault that he passed on, and it was out of my control. Although I didn't learn the reason behind the stillbirth, I learned that it wasn't my fault. And I was able to move forward from there.
Was that an important thing to learn, that you had nothing to do with it?
Yes, because guilt ate me before then. I was so bitter with myself. There was a point I didn't want to see myself in a mirror. I hated mirrors. I would see an ugly person. I just hated myself. But with tears, I learned the art of self-care, the art of self-love, to appreciate myself.
Wairimu has a message for mothers who have suffered child loss and pregnancy loss.
I'd like to tell them that it gets better. It gets better with time. But just allow yourself to feel the pain. It's not your fault. You have to go through that. No one signed up for that. We never signed up to lose our babies. We found ourselves here. And it gets better. Just love yourself. Love yourself. Love life. Because that's what you're here to love ourselves and to love life, to live. Our first work is to live.
Death of a loved one always leaves a void in one's life. Grieving creates a thin line between holding on to memories of the ones we love and letting go, which is not easy. Grief itself is like an ocean, sometimes rough, sometimes calm, but one must keep sailing. Beldin, Walyeula KTN News.